Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fly the Line. I'm your host Dylan Gore, and this is our pilot episode. Right, so what is Fly the Line? That is a really good question. I think I started this podcast as is both kind of for myself and also following the suggestions from a lot of other people over the years. Yeah, definitely. I think around this year, and I think definitely this year. I've had a lot of people tell me, "Oh, you have such a voice. You should probably use it for something, do voiceovers or a podcast." And I've been taking a look around, and I think podcast might be the way to play here. Because I can yap very much, actually too much for my own good, probably. But if I can talk, I'd rather talk into a mic than just talk at myself because that's kind of weird. But yeah, this is Fly the Line. So what does Fly the Line mean? That is also a really good question. Fly the line is kind of a phrase that I've been. It's kind of a phrase that I've known since a long time ago. I don't know where I heard it from. And only after a long time did I kind of realize that it was more directed towards the aviation industry, right? In its traditional sense, fly the line, like the phrase itself, is directed towards airline pilots, or flying the line is kind of a euphemism or an idiom for actually flying in an airline. But to me, I think I've had it in the corner of my room for a long time. There's a poster that's staring me in the face that says "Fly the Line." Um, and I don't know. For me, I've kind of turned it into a phrase of almost motivation, right? It's been a kind of a mantra that I've lived my life by. In that, this is starting to get a bit abstract, but fly the line, I think, it's the kind of the idea that the line is your own path or your own life, I suppose. And if you stick to that, flying the line means, to me, it means, it's freedom to do whatever the hell that you want to do. And it's knowing that you are an independent entity and you need to follow your path, and you don't need to try and be anybody else. But I think, okay, well, that's a good segue into what I was going to talk about today. So, Flightline, I guess for me, it's kind of like a personal diary. A diary where I can just sit at a computer and just talk at a mic for 30 minutes straight, I guess. But I think uh, it's definitely something that I want to do based on my own interests, I think. So that includes things like talking about philosophy. We are talking about poetry, and I would also like to share, other interesting conversations or things that I might have come across. So for those of you who are listening in, Fireline, it's definitely not going to be themed around anything, I don't think. I think there'll be recurring stuff like, I don't know, life advice, which I'm very much known for. But other than that, I think it's kind of freeform. It really depends on what I want to talk about today and what I want to do. And I also want to get some guests on. That would be fun. To have my friends on and things. So yeah, but I think today, I think really I should really introduce myself first for anybody out there who actually doesn't know me in real life. So hi, I'm Dylan Gore. I am of 16 years of age, going on 17. I'm a high school student in Sydney, Australia. And what about me? So I think Fly the Line, like, I think the podcast names gives you a bit of an idea about who I am as a person. Naturally, I'm very much interested in the aviation industry. I have been since I was a kid, and currently projected towards becoming a pilot. But yeah, no, definitely want to go to uni first. So I think, we should probably start from there. So I think my love of flying and this whole pilot kind of flying pilot aviation thing, it started with my dad. So I am ethnically Chinese. My parents are first generation immigrants from China. And so my dad, although he studied business management when he was in China, and he did a bit of computer science as well. But when he came over to Australia, his English wasn't all that great. So he took up employment in somewhere where it kind of benefited both him, his Chinese knowledge and his Chinese heritage, but also his I suppose disadvantageous English, right? And to at the time that was working at the airport. So that was working with the airlines, the Chinese airlines, China Southern Airlines. And so basically I've been really in touch with the aviation industry since I was born, really. Yeah. Since I was born, I used to in my childhood, I can't even count how many times I followed my dad to work in the airport. Yeah, they have, the airline officers, they sit like a floor above the departure hall. Like if any of you have gone to like the T1 International Sydney Airport departure hall, if you take the lift up to the third floor, that's where all the airline officers are. My dad's office was right overlooking essentially the whole apron, and so I was in the office many times as a kid. I and my experiences with aviation didn't really stop there. I flew around quite a bit. I traveled a lot in my childhood and in my primary school days. I think COVID kind of killed off all the travel plans that we had in junior high school. I think we're really trying to get back into it, but then again, I'm heading into my HSC year, which is not great. So that's gonna be less travel. But yeah, no, I definitely had a lot of interaction with planes and flying as a kid. Um, I was on a plane earlier than most people would expect. I was on a plane at 6 or 7 months old, which is when my grandmother, she took me back to my hometown in China, or I should say spiritual hometown, in China, and yeah, but I think just that, and so obviously my dad working at the airport, he'd come home and he'd bring us merch and he'd bring me plane models and stuff, stuff around the airport, right? And so I guess once I started becoming conscious about what my dad did, I think that really got me interested into the whole idea. At the start, it was kind of just like, oh, wall planes and stuff. And I think the earliest signs of that developing love was, as I think one of the earliest examples I can remember of this is when I think roughly around the age of 4 or 5. I had a massive, one of those A3 sketchbooks, those really massive ones, and yeah, I would try and do drawings of planes, and that it like kind of technical, but also not, which I think will bleed into a point I will have later. But yeah, no, technical drawings of aircraft and stuff, and so I think that was kind of my first uh real kind of expression of interest in there. But as that went on, I got more knowledgeable of the actual flying side, right? So it was probably around the age of 7 or 8 when I first got my hands on a flight simulator. I had seen it on the Steam store, as you do as a kid, and I was like, oh, it's a flight simulator. This is really cool. I should try and give it a go. So I bought it. I I pushed my mom to go buy it. I begged her to buy it for me. And she bought me this really really crappy joystick that she had found off Taobao. Um, and there I was, back then. I didn't have a gaming PC. I didn't have a proper desktop PC either. Like the only desktop that we had in the house was this massive Apple, the Mac, the desktop one, the one that cost a damn lot of money. But yeah, no, like one of the old generations. That was a hunk of junk. Like definitely, like maybe for work and like I don't know, running Microsoft Word might be fine, but to run a game, definitely not, right? And so there I was sitting in the corner of my granddad's. Oh yeah, so my grandparents, so my maternal grandparents, they live with me. They have been since I was born. And I think that's kind of a bit of Asian tradition there for you, Chinese tradition, I guess. Um, and so yeah, so I'm sitting in the corner of my grandpa's room on his pre-built like Dell this really crappy desktop PC that barely functioned. Like, I mean, barely. Like, when you'd open it, it'd take at least 2 minutes to just get to just to get to the home screen, right? To get to desktop. And yeah, so there I was, on a hot on a hot summer's afternoon, sitting there with Flight Simulator X on the DVD drive, and I just sit there with my little plasticky joystick, and I fly around. And at the start, it was kind of really just flying around. I mean, like, it was just like, oh, that looks like a cool plane. I think I've seen that before. I'm gonna go try and fly it. And yeah, just random shenanigans. I think that happened for about a year and a bit. Yeah, but I mean, obviously, by that, like, a kid isn't gonna go like, oh, I'm gonna go study a flight manual on how to actually fly this thing. Like, it's not, you don't do that by yourself as a 7 or 8 year old kid. And I think it was around, yeah, it was definitely at least, it probably would have been at least a year until I was actually like, okay, well, maybe I should actually start learning the systems, right? Maybe I should actually start learning how to fly this thing. Because I was kind of doing the whole thing about like, oh, I'm just gonna load into this airport on the runway. I'm gonna fly, do a loop de loop, come back down, crash land basically, and then turn it off for the day. Like, I got fed up with just doing that day in, day out. So I was like, okay, well, why don't I actually try and understand all the stuff in the cockpit? And so, like a flight simulator, right? A flight simulator isn't really a game. It's a simulator, in that it simulates everything that actually happens in the cockpit. Well, usually, right? If the plane that you're flying is made, intricately enough, it will simulate all the systems, and it will have all of the technical specification. Excuse me, all the technical specifications and all that for you to actually fly, right? So I was like, okay, well, why don't I try and why don't I try to learn how to do this? And I did, and I would spend those afternoons after school, just on like YouTube and things, watching tutorials. Oh, how do I start the engines, right? Like, I used to load in with the engines running. I was like, it started off with the most basic things, like, how do I start the engine on this thing, right? How do I read these flight instruments? And yeah, obviously, so over the years, they got more and more complex, right? It was like, okay, well, how do I actually start it from like completely cold and dark, right? So cold and dark is when a plane is completely shut off, like no electrical power, so everything is dark, no nothing. So I was like, well, why don't I learn from there, right? Like, go the extra step. And so at the start, I was kind of just like, blindly following procedures. And then, you'd read in, right? You try and understand, oh, why do I have to flick this switch? What is this system that I'm turning on? And so over the years, that's just developed and developed and developed. I think, yeah, there was, for the first few years, it was kind of, how do I start a plane up? How do I put out a fire in the engines in the case of that scenario? How do I turn on the flight displays and whatnot? And yeah, like, only I'm inclined to say like 2 or 3 years ago did I actually go like, okay, I want to figure out how to how to properly fly this thing, like, use autopilot and stuff. But yeah, no, we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves, so I'm gonna go back. Yeah, so I started flying there, and then I went into high school, and so by that time I had already gotten a bit of flight gear and stuff. Some gifted by family friends, some others I bought myself. And so yeah, I upgraded from the little Chinese made crappy joystick, and I moved up to this set of Logitech Flight. It was a yoke and a throttle. On to this day, I still don't have much more because I never really saw a need for it. As I got older and a bit busier, because you can fly with keyboard controls and stuff, and I fly for the feeling, right? Anyways, and so yeah, so with that, and it came, and 2020 also came, so that would have been first year of high school, so year 7. That's when Microsoft Flight Simulator came out as well, and that was a major leap, right? For any of you in the gaming community, or even better, in the flight simming community, Microsoft Flight Simulator would have made like it would have made absolute headlines when it came out. You know, the level of fidelity and the level of detail and the graphics and stuff, everything was groundbreaking, right? Absolutely everything. It was, yeah, no, it was the next step in flight simulators. And you know, it was no longer, you know, like dirt textures on the ground anymore with like random airport buildings. It was, you know, it was what was in real life, right? Yeah, as much as possible. Like you fly over and you compare, you put it together with a video you took, I don't know, on a recent vacation, and you were not meant to like tell the difference. I guess like that was how realistic I guess it looked. And so when I bought it, and I was like, oh my god, you know, this is very cool and stuff. And then my PC broke, my my faithful gaming PC. So during that time, I upgraded from my grandpa's old desktop. It's still sitting there. It's probably gonna take like half a century to start up now because it's just so old. Halfway through that, one of our family friends actually, they were kind enough to gift us a third generation hand me down. Actually, it was a gaming PC, and yeah, it was pretty old. It was running like for you tech geeks out there, it was running we didn't even no, it wasn't even RTX back then. Yeah, it was like GTX 1080 Ti, and yeah, it was running some form of, no, it would have been, yeah. So like the specs were really bad. So but it got by. It got by. But it had been already like a crazy number of years, and I noticed that when Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 came out, it actually couldn't support it all too well. Like I would have trouble loading in the game on like minimum settings. So I was like, you know, as any kid does, any preteen does. Oh, how do I tinker around with my computer? How do I make it go faster? And you know, you go like, oh, I'm gonna overclock it. Well, I did, and I think I overclocked it wrong, because I think I pretty much bricked my PC. Like I corrupted my Windows file. Like I can corrupted like the Windows system in its entirety, and then we had to get this guy to come in and reinstall Windows. Like everything, like all the hard drive data and stuff was still on there, or a portion of it, I'm gonna say. But yeah, no, it was I basically blew up my PC. Figuratively. Uh, so after that, I mean, it never really worked quite as well again. So it was probably in year 9 or something. It was depths of lockdown, absolute depths of lockdown. And then I was, it had been a number of months, right? It had been a number of months since all that happened, and I was like, you know, Dad, we got to get a new PC. It's starting to get old. It's not working great. We don't want it crashing again. Blah 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 blah. All that. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna build my own PC, and I did this massive, elaborate proposal to my dad about what parts I'm gonna buy, what's my budget, blah 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 blah. And it was great until I was gonna buy it on that night, and then my dad saw this like this deal for Alienware, and I don't even remember how much it was discounted, but like essentially the PC was, it was cheap enough that like if you bought the PC, it was at the same price if you bought like an RTX 3070, no, a 3080 Ti, like at the time, like if it, because 3080 Ti had just come out from Nvidia, and basically like we were getting the whole PC for the price of just a graphics card, and we were just like, you know what, fine, it's right, it's all right, you know, I don't want a pre-built PC because obviously that comes with a whole host of issues, but I relinquished. So yeah, that's the PC that's been sitting in my computer room for the last 2.5 years. So after we got it, you know, that thing obviously running way better, right? I went from a 1080 to 3080, so massive improvements there. And yeah, so that's been my workhorse. That's my workhorse PC for a number of years. Yeah. For a very long time. And so yeah, so all throughout that, I've been trying to learn, upskill, trying to learn how to fly different planes. Also, like after I figured out this one, you know, oh, maybe now I'm gonna try and understand the systems on this one, and through that, I kind of, yeah, you would the whole thing about Flight Simulator is the community is so the community is really really strong in that we have a whole bunch of like DLC and stuff and like add-ons basically. And these are these are for a whole host of things, but usually to add realism, right? I'm talking about scenery add-ons. So none of the randomly generated stuff anymore. It's like handcrafted scenery. Like if you fly over Sydney City, with the scenery mod, like you will look out your right side window and you will see like the Sydney Tower Eye, Harbour Bridge, everything, right? It's cool. But I think for me, like what I enjoy the most, and I think what most people enjoy as well, is the aircraft add-ons. Yeah, so Microsoft Flight Simulator it comes like from the developers. It comes with only a really select amount of planes. Obviously for me, I love commercial aviation. And I think Microsoft Flight Simulator is very much for commercial aviation. Like if I didn't like commercial, if I like military aviation, then I would have been playing like things like DCS, like Digital Combat Simulator, or I don't know, War Thunder a long time ago, right? But I don't. I like commercial. So, yeah, no, I bought a number of planes over the bought, downloaded, whatever, right? And so yeah, and over the years, I've basically gotten myself to the point where I can just sit in an aircraft cockpit, and I can kind of just figure out everything, just by like basic ideas of flying, right? These systems that have become kind of ubiquitous in like aviation, like in the aviation milieu. Like I can kind of just sit down and figure everything out, which I think is yeah, it's a decent skill. Yeah, it will be useful when disaster strikes and we have to run to an airport and I'm the only guy flying. Yeah, but no, so that's been my flying journey up to now in terms of flight simming. So obviously, flight simming has been the major facet of my aviation, my love for aviation. Right, it's the kind of the big thing that I have. But that hasn't stopped me from expanding, I guess, to other reaches as well. In my aviation hobby. In fact, for work experience last year, if you guys don't know, in New South Wales, Australia, New South Wales, in year 10, you have this thing called work experience where you essentially go off for 5 days, like a week in the school term. And it's basically like you just apply to go to an employer, like an actual business, an actual enterprise out there, and you do basically like a it's work experience, right? So it's like an internship for about a week's time. Really fun. I went to my dad. Technically, you're not allowed to do that, but my dad gave the form to one of his colleagues to sign. So technically, it didn't look like I was going him. Sorry, Mr. Driscoll. But yeah, no, I went. I essentially, yeah, I just followed my dad to work for a week. Like before, it was kind of just like, oh, okay, my dad's gonna go off and do work, and I'm just gonna sit there and do, like, I don't know, homework. But this time it was actually me, going along with him, doing all the duties that he would be doing throughout the day. So I brought a friend along with me. Shout out Aurelian if he's listening in. Yeah, he's been my good buddy. In terms of this entire aviation passion throughout the years. He applied to go do work experience with Qantas, I'm pretty sure, but he got rejected, which is very funny. So yeah, my dad was willing enough to take us two, and yeah, so that was us for a week. Yeah, it was really fun. If I expand this into like a video podcast, like, I don't know, something like Joe Rogan or something, I might be able to show like actual images, but for now I don't have any appealing enough spaces to do that in. Nor do I think I have the equipment for recording. Anyways, so you guys will just listen to my voice for now, I guess. That, and so yeah, like basically just shadowed my dad for a week. And that was like, waking up in the morning, going to the airport at 5 a.m., getting there, having a really quick breakfast, like just scarfing down breakfast, and immediately, putting on high-vis vests, putting on we had suits underneath, obviously, but like we're putting on the high-vis vests, going down to the gate, Seeing the plane come in. I was there when they connected the jet bridge and everything, and they let all the people off. It was really cool week. Really, really, really cool week. Yeah, really kind of solidified my passion, I guess. Because I was a bit shaky before, surrounding it. But I think that's a story for another day. I think career path, right? I say I want to be a pilot, but that has come with it a whole host of like other stories, right? That much like how I guess this passion of flying came by, that has gone through a lot of development that I think I will reserve for a later episode. I'm gonna try and keep it to 30 minutes there, and I think I'm gonna try and keep it to 30 minutes just in total, so I don't bore you guys with all my rambling. But yeah, so that week really drove the whole aviation thing home. Obviously, I always get excited when I can fly. Especially overseas, internationally. Absolutely love it. What else have I done? I've also been flying, like quite literally just flying by myself. Like those little, small like those smaller propeller planes, I guess. Yeah. So I was a member of the Australian Air Force Cadets for a while, and technically I still am. It's just I don't frequent it too much anymore. Yeah, I'm a leading cadet. Um, and yeah, in the Australian Air Force Cadets, and the whole reason I wanted to join that, anyways, the reason why I went there for like 3 years and a half, was because they did flying. Yeah. AAFC is really cool. I think we can plug it here. Australian Air Force Cadets is really cool. Um, I guess. Yeah, like it's really like for those of you that don't really know, just think like the army but for kids. Sorry, Air Force but for kids, like just the defense forces but for kids. Essentially, it's like it's putting you through things like drill, which is when drill is essentially it's like when everybody but goes out onto the parade, marches around, blah blah blah, salutes and that's all that really kind of fancy, I guess, fancy walking, fancy actions, the military kind of stuff. That falls under the drill, and then obviously we got lessons surrounding like just the Air Force in itself. What is the Air Force? What do they do? And we learn a lot of really cool things. Things that really align with my passion of flying. Aircraft recognition, just like flight in general. Like we would learn just flying things. We built drones. So like a lot of really really cool stuff. That's all centered around flying in the Air Force, which I felt was really cool. Naturally, like I said before, I'm not really into the military aspect of flying. I'm much more commercial, but it was really cool just as an outlet of my passion, I guess. So I joined it back in God, it must have been end of year 8 because I'm very young for my grade. I essentially like obviously for every country, every place it's the same, but for every kind of grade that you have in school, there's obviously like a cutoff date. Obviously, right? Because you can't just be like, oh, I'm 20 and I want to join a year 7 class. That's not how it works. So there's a cutoff date to like how old or how young. There's that one day in the year where it kind of blips over to the next grade. And I was born like the cutoff date for that year was August the 1st, and I was born like 2 weeks before that, like July 16. Um, and so I'm forever doomed to be the youngest kid in my grade forever. Yeah, so that's caused a lot of problems over the years. With especially things that have an age requirement, right? Like the whole joining cadets thing. So I started my cadets journey like a whole year later than everybody else. Um, like my contemporaries, I think, like in my friends and stuff, because they're all basically a year older than me. But yeah, no, I the whole reason I went was I wanted to fly because they offered a flying course. There's a very very elusive, very special powered flying course that the Australian Aviation Cadets does. They only take a very limited amount of people each year, and unfortunately, I didn't quite get there. Yeah, because they probably want somebody with more dedication than I did to cadets. Um, but yeah, it's basically like choosing. I'm pretty sure it's like 5 or 10 out of a pool of hundreds of applicants. Like I'm talking about all around the state and stuff. So I guess it was kind of natural that I didn't get there, but I will say I did get my flying experience anyways. We were going to an event and for cadets, and just as a special treat that day, I guess the Air Force base that I do Air Force cadets on, yeah, they were offering flying experiences, and so they strapped me onto a plane, with obviously an Air Force pilot, and yeah, we flew around for a while and had a good chat up in the air. Um, and yeah. I've had a lot of experiences over the years to really cement this whole aviation thing. And I think we can, but honestly, I think for today, I think we should stop it there. Hopefully I'll have time next week. Hopefully. As I am obviously going into year 12. Life gets a bit busy sometimes, so upload schedule might not be as consistent as I would like it to be. But hopefully I will be able to continue the stories next time. And hopefully next time I'm going to be talking more about, I guess, how the whole career path thing has changed throughout the years. And how I'm, still pretty dead set on it. Despite everything. That's foreshadowing. All right, but yeah. Well, thank you for listening in to this week's Flatline. As always, I'm Dylan Gore, and I'll see you next time.